things are getting increasingly violent in Minneapolis, as now there's more and more attacks on ICE agents. And in fact, one just got attacked and ganged up on by 3 people, and eventually resulting in him having to fire his gun in self-defense. Luckily, no one was killed in this incident, but the ICE officer had to go to the hospital, and he was in pretty bad condition. And obviously the person that got shot in the leg obviously had to go to the hospital too. But this violence keeps on happening. So let's actually read the Homeland Security statement about what happened. At 6:50 p.m. Central Time, federal law enforcement officers were conducting a targeted traffic stop in Minneapolis of an illegal alien from Venezuela who was released into the country by Joe Biden in 2022. In an attempt to evade arrest, the subject fled the scene in his vehicle and crashed into a parked car. The subject fled on foot. The law enforcement officer caught up to the subject on foot and attempted to apprehend him when the subject began to resist and violently assault the officer. While the subject and law enforcement were in a struggle on the ground, 2 subjects came out of a nearby apartment and also attacked the law enforcement officer with a snow shovel and a broom handle. As the officer was being ambushed and attacked, the 2 individuals, the original subject, got loose and began to strike the officer with a shovel or broomstick. Fearing for his life and safety, as he was being ambushed by 3 individuals, the officer fired a defensive shot to defend his life. The initial subject was hit in the leg. All 3 subjects ran back into the apartment, barricaded themselves inside. The attacked officer and subject were both in the hospital. Both attackers are in custody. This attack is on another brave member of law enforcement. Took place in Minnesota's top leaders, Governor Walz and Mayor Frey, are actively encouraging organized resistance to ICE and federal law enforcement. This hateful rhetoric and resistance against men and women who are simply trying to do their jobs must end. Federal law enforcement officers were facing a 1,300% increase in assaults against them as they put their lives on the line to arrest criminals and lawbreakers. So this is another violent incident where people are attacking ICE agents, and it actually resulted in a similar situation. It actually resulted in a situation where someone got shot. And this continues to happen because these protests are going on. The more interactions there are between ICE agents and protesters, the more that left encourages it, the more likely this will happen. This will continue to increase, continue to result in even more violence, unless this is stopped in some way. Additionally, if you notice, it was initially just one person, but because the left has radicalized so many people, whenever there's now an ICE agent out on the streets, guess what? They're going to be assaulted. They're going to be attacked. So, and that's what happened here. 2 individuals that weren't related to the person attacked an ICE officer, attacked law enforcement because they've been radicalized, to the point where they think the ICE are Nazis and that they're actually kidnapping people. And that's not even happening. That's not true. So the more this rhetoric keeps on happening, the more incidents that will happen like this, the more violence, the more stuff will happen. And the Democrats, Tim Walz and the mayor of New York continue. Ilhan Omar, pretty much everyone on the Democrat side continues to egg on protesters, continue to support them and their violent tendencies. They continue to do it. The only person I've really seen on the Democrat side was John Fetterman coming out in support of ICE agents. The Democrat Party has been funneling extremism for many, many years. And now they're getting to the point where it's actually terroristic threats. As now protesters are actually breaking into ICE vehicles. This just happened last night. And breaking. Minnesota rioters stole sensitive documents, including arrest warrants and agent information from DHS and FBI vehicles they broke into. I intercepted most agent info to keep it out of the hands of these thugs, as well as access to ICE badges, access to badges to ICE facility. Let's actually watch the video.
Fake arrest warrants? Oh, what the hell? Bro, oh shit. Bro, you not arrest warrants. Hey, take these bitches to the news.
So see right there, those are sensitive documents. They include arrest warrants. They include arrest warrants. They include information and badges and items that are critical to security of our federal officers, FBI and DHS and ICE. All these federal officers, all this info is going to be leaked. They could also have info from confidential sources, from people that have infiltrated terrorist organizations, infiltrated cartels. And the fact that these protesters are now breaking into cars and getting this information is a major security risk. These people are now getting information that can directly put people, agents, in direct threat. They're putting them directly in the path of violence in terms of these leftist protesters. This keeps happening over and over and over again. These people are actively causing harm to ICE agents and to the people around them too. Because again, the more that this type of stuff happens, the more harm that's going to be caused to ICE agents, and it's going to put them more on edge, and it's going to be more. There's going to be even more violence and more likely threat situations that are going to happen with these protesters, and this needs to stop. Additionally, they didn't just break into one vehicle; they broke into other vehicles and got even a rifle. So let's actually watch this video of them doing that.
Oh, wow.
Right there, a rifle bag. They're now collecting weapons. These protesters are not protesters. When you call them protesters, they're not rioters even. They're terrorists. They're collecting weapons to fight against the government. You've seen calls online for people to get weapons, to use the Second Amendment to use terrorism and threats against federal officers and agents. In fact, there was also a video online. I forgot to archive it and put it up there. But there's also another one where these protesters are now carrying guns to the protest. These are not really protests anymore. They're not even rioters anymore. They're terrorists. They're directly putting people, citizens, directly in harm's way. They're stealing information on these ICE agents. They're doxing them. In fact, there was 4,500 ICE agents that were doxed just a day ago. And now that those ICE agents are doxed, guess what? They're now going to be receiving tons of threats from these people on the left. They're also going to more likely be, their kids are going to be harassed. Their families are going to be put in danger. All this is happening. This is basically terrorism. They're attacking people, and they're making threats. They're causing harm to people, not just ICE agents. Again, I keep mentioning this. Most of these agents are not just pulling people that are illegal immigrants that have committed no crime. A lot of the ICE agents, in fact, I believe 70% of the people that they've arrested have a criminal record besides being an illegal immigrant. So they're harming them in that way too. If ICE cannot go in and arrest these criminals and get them out of their country, guess what? We're going to have even more murderers, drug cartel members funneling drugs into the United States, people, human traffickers, and people like that are causing active harm. You see it with plenty of cases where illegal immigrants have been murdering a lot of murder people when they shouldn't even be in the country. And this continues to happen because the left continues to protest and get directly in the way. In fact, I keep using the word protesters. I probably even shouldn't use that. They're rioters at this point. They're blocking federal agents. They're impeding law enforcement. Again, crimes They're committing active crimes. You can go protest on the side of the street. You get out, be on the side of the street, not actually blocking ICE agents from doing their jobs. That's fine. But when you're actually looting FBI and DHS vehicles, when you're helping an illegal immigrant that's incredibly violent and assaulting officers, this is not protests at this point. It's not even riots. This is terrorism. It is terrorism at this point. Let's continue watching the video anyways.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
There's some bullets.
Hey, that's a 40 shell?
See, they're even purposely collecting the ammo there. When you have these protesters that are stealing weapons that are not legally marked, they're not legally marked to the, they're not linked to the person that has the gun. Like pretty much every gun in the U.S., they're all marked to an individual. They have certain engravings that they're all in a database. But even when they're going against their own statements on gun control, stealing weapons, what does that tell you? They've been against guns forever. And now that they're breaking that principle, that's how you know that the only reason that they would break that principle is that they're going to use it. And that also shows you that it's not really about gun control either, because they're willing to take guns that are illegal. They're taking them, they're stealing them. So it's not really what the left believes in a lot of these cases. Let's continue the video anyways.
Ain't no way. Tourniquet there.
Did he get...
Additionally, if you look at the video here, it wasn't just the ICE car. There's other cars also being looted, vandalized. That one right there in the corner. So it's not. They're not even. They're not being peaceful at all. It's either they're rioters or terrorists at this point, and something does need to be done. Honestly, I think Nick Sorter is famously a Republican. He's told DHS about this, but if anyone does personally know that that plate tag, then they need to, they should help DHS on this, because those people, they now have a gun that's not licensed, that's not linked to them anyway. They committed a felony breaking into a car. They're stealing weapons. This person needs to be caught. Needs to be caught as soon as possible.
Oh, shit.
And guess what? You see it right there? They're running away from cops. And the fact that they're running away is showing that they do know that what they're doing is illegal. They know it's wrong. They know it's wrong. So it's these protesters and the people that are breaking and entering here, they are actively committing crime, and something does need to be done. And what needs to be done is for them to be arrested. Because if they're arrested, they're not going to commit the crime again. But this will continue to happen unless, first of all, Minnesota police do cooperate and actually help to arrest illegal people that are working with ICE and helping catch illegal immigrants. And next, we're having law enforcement actually arrest members that are committing violent crimes and not just releasing them, like so many of these activist judges do, and like so many of these blue state attorney generals and prosecutors do. They continue to let them off. And this needs to stop. But it's not going to stop unless you go after the people at the top. So right before this happened, around 20 minutes, Tim Walz put this speech out. So let's actually watch the speech. And in the speech, he actually makes many, many statements that are directly inciting violence and violence against ICE agents. So let's look at it.
2,000 to 3,000 armed agents of the federal government have been deployed to Minnesota. Armed, masked, undertrained ICE agents are going...
They're not undertrained, first of all. These are trained. They have to be trained to go out on the field. This is requirements within DHS themselves. Within DHS itself. So, it's not undertrained. Walz is just lying here.
Door to door, ordering people to point out where their neighbors of color live.
No. They do not just go after people of color. They go after everyone. You see them at these protests arresting white liberal women. It's not race. None of this is about race. It's the fact that people are entering the country and breaking laws. Tim Walz is just stupid here.
They're pulling over people indiscriminately, including U.S. citizens, and demanding to see their papers. And
if you're a U.S. citizen, just show them your driver's license. It's that simple.
Grocery stores, at bus stops, even at our school.
Additionally, they're not indiscriminately pulling people over. They're pulling people over if they have arrest warrants or if they've committed a crime, like blocking ICE agents, like impeding an investigation. That's what happened with Renee Good. That's what happened in so many of these videos you watch where people are actively impeding ICE operations, impeding federal law enforcement. So that's just blatantly untrue what Tim Walz just said there.
They're breaking windows, dragging pregnant women down the street, just plain grabbing Minnesotans and shoving them into unmarked vans.
You know why they're unmarked? It's because a lot of these protesters and a lot of these people target the vans and impede ICE operations. That's why they're unmarked. If this didn't happen, they wouldn't have to have them unmarked. Plus, they have sirens on. Whenever they're doing arrests, they do have sirens on. You saw this with the arrest of Renee Good. When they were trying to arrest Renee Good, there were sirens on the ICE car. There were sirens. So they're not even completely unmarked. You can tell when they're being arrested. Additionally, this next claim, pulling pregnant women off the streets and putting them in cars, if they're committing a crime, they do need to be arrested. It doesn't matter if you're pregnant. You're committing a crime. It's that simple.
Kidnapping innocent people with no warning and no due process. Let's be very, very clear. This long ago stopped being a matter of immigration enforcement. Instead, it's a campaign of organized brutality against the people of Minnesota by our own federal government. Last week, that campaign claimed the life of Renee.
I don't really need to say anything, but it's kind of obvious that he's lying there. I'll just continue.
Nicole Good. We've all watched the video. We've all seen what happened. And yet, instead of conducting an impartial investigation...
Yeah, we all saw what happened. The ICE agent got hit with the car. In fact, there was internal bleeding. That just came out yesterday, where it was a statement that was corroborated by multiple sources that the ICE agent had internal bleeding and was in the hospital for 4 to 6 hours. It's self-defense at that point. If you get hit by a car, it is self-defense. It might not be perfect self-defense, but still, he was in fear of bodily harm. And you all saw that with this incident here. He was being, earlier yesterday, the ICE agent was being beat up by 3 people. 3 people. That is self-defense again. This continues to happen because people like Tim Walz encourage this violence. Yeah, let's just continue anyways.
so we can hold accountable the officer responsible for Renee's death. The Trump administration is devoting the full power of the federal government to finding an excuse to attack the victim and her family. Just yesterday, 6 federal prosecutors, including the longtime...
Yeah, those are activist prosecutors. Renee Good's wife said drive when the ICE officer was in front of the car. That is incitement to violence. By every means, that is incitement to violence, and she should be prosecuted. It doesn't matter if it's political in this situation. It's incitement to violence. Although I don't... It's also incitement to invading ICE officers. It's incitement to engage in a crime. So yes, she should be prosecuted.
Career prosecutor leading the charge to investigate and eliminate fraud in our state's programs quit their jobs rather than go along with this.
You know why they quit their jobs? Because they were forced to by you. In fact, they had a press conference about this. Not a press conference. A congressional hearing about this, where they said they were forced to quit by you. So no.
Assault on the United States Constitution. But as bad as it's been, Donald Trump intends for it to get worse. This week, he went online to promise that, quote, the day of retribution and reckoning is coming. That's a direct threat against the people of this state, who dared to vote against him 3 times, and who continue to stand up for freedom with courage and empathy and profound grace.
Empathy? No. The people there do not have empathy. They celebrated Charlie Kirk's murder. They celebrate the breaking into of ICE agents. They celebrate the beating up of ICE agents. They are not empathetic. They're violent.
All across Minnesota, people are stepping up to help their neighbors who are being unjustly and unlawfully targeted. They're distributing care packages and walking kids to school and raising their voices in peaceful protest, even though...
Broken into hotel was vandalized. Cars being broken into by protesters. People sending in fireworks at ICE agents. People throwing water bottles. People trying to run ICE agents over with cars. People impeding operations. No, not peaceful. Every piece of evidence does not show peaceful.
Doing so has made many of our fellow Minnesotans targets for violent retribution. Folks, I know it's scary, and I know it's absurd that we all have to be defending law and order, justice, and humanity while also caring for our families.
Law and order. You presided over the George Floyd protest, which resulted in billions upon billions of property damage. You presided over this in Minnesota, where now there's being ICE agents being attacked. It's not law and order. It's never been law and order. You release criminals. You have billions of dollars of fraud. $9 billion, half the federal money sent to the Minnesota since 2018. Tim Walz is not. Tim Walz has never been law and order. Never.
We're trying to do our jobs. So tonight, let me say once again to Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, end this occupation. You've done enough. Let me say 4 critical things to the people of Minnesota. 4 things I want you to hear as you watch.
You know who's actually occupying Minnesota? It's the illegal immigrants. They're not supposed to be here. They've broken the law. They've entered illegally. They're the ones that are occupying. They're the ones that Minnesota and all these politicians are bowing down to in Minneapolis. You saw how Jacob Frey actually had to make a campaign ad in Somali. They're the ones that are captured. They're the ones that are taking political donations. They're the ones that are related to this fraud. So no, it's not ICE agents that are occupying. It's not the federal government. This is still the US of A. They have jurisdiction in Minnesota still. It's not a foreign country. The ones that are occupying are the Somalis and any illegal immigrant within the nation, and these corrupt government officials that are clearly breaking the law.
the news and look out for your neighbors. First, Donald Trump wants this chaos. He wants confusion. And yes, he wants more violence on our streets. We cannot give him what he wants. We must protest loudly, urgently, but also peacefully.
Loudly and urgently, but peacefully? No, that's not what's been happening. It's never been peaceful in Minneapolis in terms of protest. Like, almost never. Again, George Floyd, just look and see what happened there. Now this. It's always particularly Twin Cities that it happens in. And you see it, and you'll eventually see a pattern where all mainly violent protests always start in Minneapolis. There's 2 dots in the line. There's many other cases of it happening. So it's obviously not peaceful.
Indeed, as hard as we will fight in the courts and at the ballot box, we cannot and will not let violence prevail.
You've let it prevail so far. Not defending ICE agents, not arresting people that are being violent. So far, you guys are bowing down to the violence.
You're angry? I'm angry. Angry's not a strong enough word, but we must remain peaceful. Second, you are not powerless. You are not helpless, and you are certainly not alone. All across Minnesota, people are learning about opportunities, not just to resist, but to help people who are in danger. Thousands upon thousands of our fellow Minnesotans are going to be relying on mutual aid in the days and weeks to come, and they need our support. Tonight, I want to share another way you can help. Witness. Help us establish a record of exactly what's happening in our communities. You have an absolute right to peacefully film ICE agents as they conduct these activities. So carry your phone with you at all times. And if you see these ICE agents in your neighborhood, take out that phone and hit record. Help us create a database of the atrocities against Minnesotans, not just to establish a record for posterity, but to bank evidence for future prosecution. The third thing I want to say to you tonight is, we will not.
So now they're planning on making a database of ICE agents and their info. You've already done that. 4,500 have been doxxed. 4,500 agents, FBI and ICE agents and people from Homeland Security have been doxxed. At this point, sure, you can record. But that does not matter. You still have all the information. And this is a deadly threat. Again, a deadly threat to the people and family, to the ICE agents and their families. And this cannot be allowed to continue. Additionally, right there, he said they're planning on going for future prosecutions against ICE agents. And this has already been implied by Jacob Frey, by members of the Democrat Party, is that they want to target and arrest ICE agents for doing their legal and lawful job. And this will continue to happen. They'll continue to they'll continue to advocate for this unless we arrest them and actually have accountability for people that are calling for active resistance against law enforcement. They need to be stopped at all cost. Not all cost, but they need to be stopped.
Have to live like this forever. Accountability is coming at the voting booth and in court. We will reclaim our communities from Donald Trump. We will reestablish a sense of safety for our neighbors, and we will bring an end to this moment of chaos, confusion, and trauma. We will find a way to move forward, and we'll do it together, and we'll not be alone. Every day, we are working with business leaders, faith leaders, legal experts, and elected officials.
That's another thing. Business leaders are working with Tim Walz. I thought they were the party of anti-corporation. They're the party that did not like corporations, did not like the free market, and yet they rely on these corporations for their money. Additionally, you also know it when they're relying on private individuals that fund these types of stuff. There's plenty of videos out there of protesters admitting they're being paid. And guess what? That's probably coming from a lot of these corporations and a lot of left-wing actors, particularly one major actor, George Soros. And those people also need to be stopped and arrested, because they're the ones also funding the activism against and funding the violence against the federal government.
From across this country, they've all seen what Donald Trump is trying to do to our state, and they know their states could be next. And that brings me to the fourth thing I want to say tonight, Minnesota, how incredibly proud I am of the way that you've risen to meet this unbearable moment. But I'm not at all.
Yeah, he said he's proud of Minnesota, and then he wants things to be peaceful. Those are two opposite statements, because it has not been peaceful. There's been violence against ICE agents. There's been launching of fireworks. There's this breaking in here to a federal car, to a car, an ICE agent's car, and getting documents that are sensitive. There is the people actually starting to use cars to blockade ICE, impeding operations. There are people that are actively assaulting ICE agents. You saw this with the incident just yesterday, and how the ICE agent was attacked by 3 people, thus resulting in him having to use his gun and shooting him the suspect in the leg. This is by all means, if he's proud of it and then he says peaceful, those are untrue. He's obviously proud of it, but it's untrue that he's proud of it because it's peaceful. He's proud of it because they are actually using violence against ICE agents.
Surprised, because this is who we are. Minnesotans believe in the rule of law.
This is who Minnesota is? I don't think it's the entirety of Minnesota. I think it's a decent portion. That is violent. That is threatening and threatening to kill ICE agents. And that will eventually result in even more violence, in possibly the death of an ICE agent or death of someone else in Minnesota. Simply because protesters won't let ICE do their jobs. Jobs that were voted for by the American people. Trump won by the popular vote, and immigration was his main thing. It wasn't like people didn't know that he was going to deport people. In fact, that's the main thing he ran on. So it's yeah. If this is the true character of Minnesota, as we've seen a pattern of it, then it's not a good character.
And Minnesotans believe in the dignity of all people. We're a place where there's room for everybody, no matter who you are or who you love or where you came from. A place where we feed our kids, we take care of our neighbors, and we look out for those in the shadows of life. We're an island of decency in a country being driven towards cruelty. We will remain an island of decency, of justice, of community, of peace. And tonight I come before you simply to ask, don't let anyone take that away from us. Thank you, protect each other, and may God bless the people of Minnesota.
Tim Walz, that speech right there, that was complete incitement to insurrection. And that means at this point, I think Trump should act on it. But yet he's continued to do nothing. Tim Walz and Jacob Fry and Ilhan Omar, AOC, and everyone that's related to this incident should be arrested. Yet, and Trump should invoke the Insurrection Act to put this terroristic violence down. Yet, what does he do? Stands on the sidelines. Trump threatens to invoke Insurrection Act if Minnesota won't stop violent ICE rioters. Now, he's done this many, 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 many times. Threatened it over and over and over again. Yet he never does it. He never does it. And Trump said he was going to be a president of action. One that was going to actually do what is needed to be done to get the country back on track. From this right here, and from the fact he hasn't done anything, that's a no. That continues to be a no. And I'm honestly tired of the fact that Trump hasn't done anything. He's gotten many people on the right and many people across the country support actually going in and clearing this up. They don't want protests to get violent. They don't want there to be insurrection. They don't want there to be terrorism. Yet there is. And there will continue to be if Trump doesn't do anything. And if he doesn't do anything soon, this might actually lead to a civil war, because again, they're now getting their hands on weapons. and their stated goal is to fight against ICE agents and fight against the federal government. And I'm tired of the Trumps, and that if they're getting their weapons on stuff, it's actually leading to civil war. And I think this is one of the last chance that Trump has to actually do the invoke the Insurrection Act, and actually to work and actually put the protests down. He needs to do it sooner, or else it's going to get much, much worse. And I don't want it to get much, much worse. And there's going to be even more violence if he doesn't do anything. What he does need to do, invoke the Insurrection Act. Go in there. Arrest a lot of these public officials. Arrest a lot of these violent protesters. Tim Walz already has accusations of fraud against him. So does Ilhan Omar. So does Jacob Fry. Arrest all these members in Minnesota. Hold them accountable. Because if they're not held accountable, they will continue to act over and over and over again. That's actually what you see with a lot of these protests. They don't get the punishment a lot of the times. They get away with light slaps on the wrist. Or they don't even get caught at all. So that emboldens them. The fact that they don't believe there's going to be any punishment. If people see a punishment, they will change their behavior. That's what laws are made for, to change behavior and make sure that levels of behavior are enforced and are actually set within society. That's why I have laws against murder, laws against everything that's horrible out in the world. Because people won't do it. They're less likely to do it if they're not able to get away with it and actually face punishment. So Trump needs to invoke the Insurrection Act, and I think a lot of people on the right are tired that he isn't, including me. But at least right now, he's the only good alternative to what the left is doing. But he doesn't need to go in. And right now, he's on in my opinion, for supporting him, he's on a piece of thin ice right now. He might fall through soon, depending on what's happening. But I also, hopefully he acts. He might not, though. Anyway, what does everyone else think down in the comments? Do you think that this might result in violence escalating and a civil war possibly happening? Do you think Trump should invoke the Insurrection Act? Or do you guys think of any other solutions that would actually solve this problem? Just tell me down in the comments. Thanks to everyone for watching. Remember to like, subscribe, share this with someone you know, and we'll see you guys next time.